You ready?
Threshold down a bit on my... Yeah, okay, go.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my new video. And what is this video about? So, this video is going to be about mastering your release, your new release, which is out already and people can buy it. So go ahead and buy it. I'm going to add a link to this video. So, tell us about this album a little bit.
Well, I made them over the summer of this year, largely on the Push 3 standalone, which I also got this year. And I thought I'll put some time into seeing what an experience it is to be away from the computer. Actually, it proved to be pretty good. And I ended up making a bunch of tracks very quickly, perhaps in a way that I wouldn't normally do. And then I played them out a couple of times, or once. Once at the Cardiff show, and thought, I think I'm kind of done with them now. I think I might release them and just it's just a quick and dirty kind of dance floor EP of bangers. Well, whether they're bangers or not is subjective. I think they're bangers.
They are.
No.
Okay. And you came to me and told me to master them. You said, Nick, I have some tracks lying around, so you need to master them. You can't say no. Go ahead. And that's basically what we did. And I did something that I don't usually do, and that was an experiment for me as well, because I usually go through my rack, for my mastering rack, with a lot of hardware gear, which I'm very much used to, and it allows me to get to the point where I'm happy with the masters fairly quickly. And I feel when you do mastering, when you do production work, especially commercially, like doing things reliably and quickly is pretty important, right? Because otherwise it'll be kind of screwing around with knobs for a long while. So getting things done quickly is probably the most important thing. And this time I did something differently. So I went ahead and I decided to master your release digitally with the devices which we released a month ago, which I've been working on actually for a year and a half or something. And it's something I haven't done before. And usually the hardware process, going through hardware, is a little bit tedious, because especially when mastering a release with several tracks, you have to not just make sure they all sound good separately, but you also have to make sure the whole piece, the whole album, all 6 or whatever tracks you're mastering have to sound as one piece, as a cohesive one sequential album or whatever. So, and it's with hardware, it's a little bit difficult, because you find the sound, you print it, you go to the next track, you go through tracks, then you have to sort of go back and see if all of them match, and you have to make adjustments to all of them, reprint it. So it's a tedious process. And with digital, it's a lot simpler. And one of the reasons those devices exist is because I really wanted to bring those hardware things to the software side, and basically allow everyone to use, well, similar tools which I'm using in mastering, which I enjoy. And I felt they worked. So usually my mastering processes, or rather mastering chain, is pretty simple. There's a EQ in the beginning. There's a compressor. There's a multi-band compressor on my stereo spatial processing, which allows me to tweak the mid and side a little bit, get it sound either wider or a little bit narrower if it's too much, and it ends up with the limiter. And I basically use the same kind of tool set now. It's just fully digital. So I'm going to share my screen and show it off. So I'm a simple man, so I'm using very simple tools. It's Curves EQ is like a passive EQ, a recreation of my passive EQ. Stage allows me to work with stereo processing with mid-sides and getting things wider or narrower. I've got Opticon, which is like a recreation of an optical compressor, and the tape is a like saturator and like clipper, and adds a little bit of juice, like all of the things you should expect from tape. And I end up with FabFilter Pro, which I really like. I think it's awesome, and I don't think it works a lot on this track because I didn't feel I should push it really loud, but it does some work as well. So, should we listen to the originals a little bit?
Yes.
Anything
sure.
you want to ask, tell me, or question me?
At this point, no.
Okay, let's go ahead and listen to them. And my mastering process starts with me listening to all the tracks, getting a sense of what I'm working with, what the genre, and I think I kind of expected this to be a Ned Rush release. It sounds like Ned Rush, so so there are a couple of notes I made while listening. A little bit muddy, clipped. Some tracks were clipped, but that's fine. Track 5 is too loud, breaks are a little bit lost in some of the tracks, low mid mud, and actually another notes I made that it sounded a little bit phased. I'm not sure how to communicate, but I felt like the side is sort of pushing through the mix a little bit too much, and I felt the breaks are getting a little bit like softened and a little bit lost. So, and I've used and I've tried to rectify all these things with those 4 simple tools, and I used FabFilter to kind of clip, or rather limit the top end, not the top end, sorry, limit the amplitude. And let's compare between what we had and what we came up with, all right? And I felt you have a lot of details in your tracks. You have a lot of the small, really kind of sharp details in everything you do, and I felt those need a little bit emphasized as well. So yeah, my main tools is EQ. I've got maybe a little bit too much in the low mids, but I felt the low mids are overwhelming a little bit, and they make the whole track kind of sound a little bit heavy. And I've boosted mid range, and I've boosted a little bit of top end. And I think in a lot of cases, mid were a little bit smushed, so I've pushed mid forward. And this is an unreleased device, which I made the first, but it's fine. And the compressor is working.
Remember.
Sorry?
Sorry to interrupt you. I don't remember Stage. Is that? You just said that that's not been released?
Yeah, it's not. I have some plans for it, and I'm gonna rework it, and I'm not gonna.
And so, what is it? Is it for mid range?
So it's a fairly simple device which allows to add a little bit of width on the top end of the mix. I can actually demonstrate. So if we. Oh. So it essentially allows me to manipulate the mid inside of the track a little bit and get a little bit of width to the track, or actually make it a little bit a little bit more straight, a little bit more in the middle. And I felt boosting mid a little bit would help because the side was a little bit too loud. So the compressor isn't working a lot, and the limiter actually isn't working a lot too, because I was debating if I should clip the like with soft clipping or I should use a limiter, and I decided to go with the limiter because I felt it just sounded a little bit better on the low end, and that's what I did. Yeah, so the limiter is barely touching. It's like minus 1 dB max at points, but it's fine. So that's pretty much it. And I feel this process is incredibly convenient because I can basically listen to all of these tracks, switch between them. When I'm done, I can go back and forth, and you can see it's done through essential automation, because I can make each track have dedicated settings which I can adjust, and I can go back and forth and compare tracks, because some of them were really, really overwhelming. Like, for example, track 5, it's like really loud, and I had to, as counterintuitive it may sound, I had to make it a little bit quieter, because the rest of the album was a little bit, had a little bit less kind of amplitude to it. So yeah, I don't think we should go through all the tracks, or do you want to go through some of them, listen to some?
No, examples? I don't know. You go. You do whatever you want. I'm easy.
Okay, let's just compare them, really, just short segments, and see the difference. Is this track the most Ned Rush track we could think of?
I don't know. I've not. Well, when did I put them out? This week? Was it this week?
Yeah.
What day is it?
Last
Friday.
Week. I think last Friday.
I gave them to you last Friday. And I put them out
think so.
Wednesday, didn't I? Tuesday?
No, it's been
anyway,
2 weeks.
Listening to them now, actually, suddenly I'm a bit like, God, they're really mental.
They're good.
But the thing is that I was when I got the Push 3, it was kind of within my interest to sort of see what Max for Live stuff it will run. And my stuff is generally quite vanilla Max. Like, I don't really use externals. I don't like code anything in JavaScript or anything like that. It's all kind of out of the available tools that are there. And so I was surprised to see how well they were running. So I put some of my stuff on there, and then ended up just sort of playing around and just to sort of try and push it, like test drive it, to see what the standalone can do. And it can do that. So all these kind of like details that you speak of, all of these sort of science fiction special effects, where I was bouncing. I had like a handful of tracks, and then I'd have like a resample track, which I always do. Like my default set just loads, and I was just running stuff through, and then I just had these big load of clips, and then I had to put it back into the computer so that I could do the edits, But yeah.
And when you say your stuff, you mean net effects, right?
Yeah, those types of things. Yeah.
Yes.
Like the sort of buffer based effects stuff that I like to make, that samples granular real time samplers and delays and all that sort of stuff.
Yes, and so everyone would know Ned has his own devices out for a while as well, which are great. Everyone should go ahead and buy them. All 50 subscribers of mine. And and yeah, um, this sounds like Ned Rush to me. And by the way, when you talk about your process, I think you've shared a lot of your process on your channel as well. And if anyone's interested, they should go ahead and watch the videos because they're brilliant. They're the reason I'm I sort of jumped Ned Rush ship and decided to become a Patreon because I really enjoyed the process you've got. All right,
Thanks.
so let's go to the next one. Let's and I'm balancing the loudness because I can see the limiter is doing, and I can see what my limiter is doing. I can sort of balance the amplitude of the signals between each other so we can hear them as they sort of would sound if they had a similar loudness. All right, so the next track, it's my talk. Wow, let's listen to the This track is probably my favorite. I gotta be honest with you. I think it's brilliant. And I really like all the small details, all the jumps, as you usually have in your tracks, of course, but it's still, I really liked it. I like the vocals, how they mangled, and I really enjoyed working on this track. And I think one bit of sort of guidance you gave me before I started is basically you told me there's no bass, there's just 808 or whatever, just make it sound good.
Yeah, no bass
And
lines.
and yeah, and my usual kind of tool to do this is a Pultec because it allows me to boost and cut simultaneously, which creates this nice shape where it emphasizes the low frequencies while cutting a little bit in front of them, which is, I felt, always felt, sounded really good, and it helps with low end and emphasizing the low end really, really well.
It does something sort of magical, doesn't it?
It is.
Like
It
it can
is.
kind of take bass and sort of turn it into this really nice ball,
Yeah.
almost like, or sort of, I don't know. There's something. It's really hard to explain, but when I first heard it, I've got like a another. I think I've got like the Native Instruments Pultec, and I think I had a demo of the Waves one. This is a long time ago, and I'd heard about this sort of boosting and cutting thing. I'm not like particularly great with mixing or EQ or whatever, but I was like, oh, well, what's this all about? And I really noticed it. I was like, gosh, that actually is something quite special that's happening. And then I sort of started using it on like acoustic kick drums. I tried it a bit on bass guitar and it sort of worked a little bit, but like on acoustic kick drums or applying them to like drum breaks that I already had to the low end was just doing something that was like, I can't explain it, but I see what everyone's talking about now. It's like a weird magic. It's like a spell.
Yeah, and I feel part of the magic is how easy it is to dial. I think there's just almost no thinking. You've got limited selection of frequencies. You just dial the amounts, and then you dial the frequencies. You're going back and forth between three knobs, and you're basically done. And
Yeah.
I felt this is part of the thing that I wanted to bring to the devices as well, because I completely agree with you. It's absolutely magical. The hardware unit is crazy. If you look at the schematics is just absolute craziness. And I was speaking with a friend of mine, and we discussed it briefly that we think the reason why it sounds so good and why it's so crazy is because it was 60s and because
Yeah.
of LSD.
Maybe. Well, I've often sort of had this discussion that that maybe some of the more contemporary tools are really overcomplicated. And when you look at something like the LA2A, which is from the 50s,
Yeah.
40s, 50s, it's just two dials and it sounds fantastic. I mean, it was essentially a broadcast compressor, wasn't it? It was really for
It is.
voice and radio, I think, initially. But
Yeah.
because it's just so well designed and so easy to use, it's just, and now things are, there's almost too many choices, and I think it's just a little bit overwhelming. And that was sort of something that I liked about the Pultec approach, was that, like, just trust the amount, or rather the lack of features. Like, trust the fact that it doesn't have much, because it's just going to sound good.
Yeah, I'm with you. I also felt the hardware works really great is because a lot of smart people have actually put effort into making it sound good, and you
Yeah.
just make decisions based on the material you need. And that's it. The rest is taken care of. Everything's taken care of. There are just three knobs, and you go ahead, go to town with it. And but it works. It works really well. And I also the philosophy I took with devices is exactly that. I wanted to take care of everything, so you'd have like two knobs, and just wiggle two knobs and get the sound you need, and that's it. Um, Opticom is really simple. It's actually based on optical compressor like a A2A. It has like a saturation stage with like a tube transform saturation stage. So it sort of soft clips the signal going out, like after you makeup gain, adjust the makeup gain. So I was really inspired by optical compressors, and obviously optical compressors are a lot of sort of pain when you're using them for mastering, because those physical devices, those physical lights inside, so this optoresistors inside, they need to be matched perfectly so you could use it for a stereo processing. And you don't have to do this with digital. It just sounds like really good. You don't have to really think about this, and it's good for mastering as well. So all right. So should we move on to the next one?
Okay.
Okay, Rumour. Okay, let's listen to the original. This sounds good. I'm not sure how well the sound actually comes. Do you hear any difference when I switch back and forth between?
I do. Yeah, I do.
All right.
This one was one of my personal favorites. And this one actually has a little bit of, when I said no bass lines, I was sort of, this one, I think a little bit of the, well, maybe it might be what you've done to it, but hearing it now, I'm sort of like, oh, I can actually hear a bit of bass line in here from the sample. even though that when I was making them, I wasn't really trying to capture that. I just wanted all just 808 boom, all the because I wanted these to kind of be glitchy club tracks, like rave.
Yeah,
But
I
now I'm hearing it, I'm a little bit like, oh, there is a bit of bass line in there, probably from the sample. So.
yeah, there's I think when I was trying to sort of match them together, and the low end kind of sounds very similar between each of them, and I wanted to kind of match the energy and loudness in all of them. That's why I'm using EQA to kind of see a little bit how the spectrum looks like when I play them. So that helps me quite a bit. I still we should all use your ears. That's the most important stuff. But the visuals really help sometimes. So it's a great thing to do.
It's a bit of extra reassurance, isn't it, to have visual
Absolutely.
feedback?
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. And I right now I'm sitting with my headphones, and I never mess with the headphones. I actually hate doing anything in headphones, but I have to do this for this recording. But I'm not sure how well the sound is coming through. So hopefully it's all right. They sound good to me, and my kind of initial search of the sound was I felt these sound Ned Rush, and they sound really happy. So I felt I should make them lighter. I should make them happier with added mid range, a little bit of top end to get all those hi hats coming through really well, and all those effects. I really liked the sound of it. And yeah, on a tape I used A80 because it boosts a little bit of low end. Well, actually, quite a lot, about like dB and a half. And the saturation curve on A80 is softer than the most kind of than A88 than the model 820. So I felt for bass, for a low end specifically, it worked really, really well. And the 900's tape also has a little bit of boost of low end. So it sometimes comes out a little bit boomy. So I had to dial low frequency a little bit back, but it sounded really good to me because the low end starts to saturate when it hits the top, and it just sounds really good to me. So, all right.
So you're not kind of like overwhelmed when you get a track like this that's got loads of like crazy DSP effects in there with some probably some really bad DC offset, because I made them myself in Max, and you're not thinking like, what the hell am I going to do with this? This is a crazy person's music.
No, it's fine. I did not feel this way in any capacity, but it's a little bit difficult to work with this kind of music because it jumps a lot. Like the energy can jump really a lot, really quickly. So you can't really loop a specific moment in the song, like let's take the loudest or whatever and kind of work on it and then work your way back through the whole song, like decide if those decisions stack or if you should do something differently. So you kind of have to go about listening this as a whole. So you can't really focus on some specific part. So I feel that's an additional challenge I had to go through, but it's still fun. I felt it's really fun to work on.
Yeah, they're not particularly. They don't have a huge amount of dynamics. It's kind of all or nothing. It's either is the 808 kick in there or isn't it, and that's basically the dynamic.
It is.
Things don't get quieter, or there's no drops or anything. It's just sort of, yeah, it's just go from start to finish.
Yeah, that's true. And you can also see the kind of the original track is a little bit cliffed. Well, a little bit is probably a little bit of understatement, but they're quite flat. And
can you zoom in? Okay. Oh God, yeah, they are. This one we're looking at now, number 4.
Yeah,
it's just a block.
it's a little bit of that's why I told you, like, if it's possible, but that's fine. It's completely fine. You told me you basically printed them or resampled them, so it's rather impossible to go back. Let's just do whatever we can. And my usual approach is to work with EQ. To kind of find parts even if the track is clipped, there's usually like a spectral difference. And if you work with EQ, if you separate specific frequencies which you think kind of work best, you can restore the original dynamics. You can kind of work with the dynamics afterwards, even if the recording's pre-clipped. And we'll see it in size because it's also very clipped. And I had troubles with it because it's extremely loud, even though it doesn't seem like it on just a waveform, but it's really loud and it's a lot louder than the rest of the track. So I had to kind of find a good balance between sounding well and sounding sort of cohesive with the rest of the release. So let's dive into it. So here's what the challenge was. If we compare this track to the rest of the track, this sounds really loud. So let's do this really quickly. This sounds almost overwhelming. Can you hear it?
I can, yeah, I can actually.
Yeah, so even it's really counterintuitive, but sometimes you have to kind of restore the dynamics because when you work through the album, you kind of have to make them sound similar in a similar kind of fashion. So that's something I had to take care of. So basically, the best approach for me was to find a good sort of EQ shape, which makes the sound make it sound similar to the rest of the tracks, because this track was specifically overwhelming. But I also had to find a way to restore the dynamics because it's extremely clipped. So I think this track had the most had the most work to it. There's added mid and I backed away with sides, and yeah, so it was quite a work. But I figured it out. I think it sounds good. I think there's a lot of details, and it doesn't sound particularly muddy. And I think the biggest challenge was to take out this whole kind of low mid mud out of it.
On listening to it again right now, I'm remembered about something that I was doing with this track and the track before that I wasn't doing with some of the other ones, and that was where I'd sampled a song. I won't say what songs they are, but I'd sampled them and then I'd put them into Simpler and slice them up so that I could turn them into these little musical phrases and just hammer them out on the push or whatever, and find these little, I would just kind of bash my fingers against and find these little things and then repeat it and record it, whatever. That on these two, I was putting like wah-wah filter on the slices. So each time a slice was triggered, it would trigger the envelope of the filter to kind of make it go whoa, 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 Whereas in the previous tracks, I'd pretty much high-passed the sample to make room for the 808 kick. So I'm curious if that's a pain when you have to kind of master it, because the sort of the wah wah filter, as it were, is kind of superimposing some low end in there. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Because it was a low pass filter opening
Yes.
when the MIDI note is triggered to give it that kind of so like wob wob. It's wob wobs, classic old school wob wob, isn't it?
Classic. Yeah, it's not a problem. I didn't feel at least it's a problem. It's just some mixes are take a little bit of time to find a sound. And just to be clear, like me is I'm of course not the best mastering engineer, but I feel the mastering process in general, why I feel it's valuable, and why mastering kind of why people should turn to mastering, kind of consider mastering in general, is because you have someone whose ears you trust, essentially, who is into same kind of music you are, who's enjoying the same sound and has a good set of tools which allows him to or her to kind of achieve the results which you trust. So essentially, it's like a someone you trust with your ears, which can which can sort of transform and help you get your music sound a little bit better and a little bit truthful to everyone in the audience, right? So that's the goal of the mastering in the first place. And when I find the sound I like, it's the sound I like, which I kind of consider good sounding material. So all the changes I'm doing is, I guess, specific to me and specific to my setup, which is fairly well designed mastering setup. But I think one of the points is if you like how it sounds on your speakers, I think it's absolutely fine to just go ahead and send to mastering engineer or send to AI mastering tools, which again, a lot better. I'm a huge fan of those. I feel if they improve, a lot more good sounding music will appear. So, despite that, I'm doing mastering
That's a
occasionally.
pretty bold statement for a mastering engineer.
Yeah, I would say so. I feel it's a great progress and it's a great thing for music in general because mastering takes time, it takes effort, it takes money. Artists, some most well, when I say most, it's just sometimes there's no budget to do these things, but they help tremendously. So trust your process, just do your thing, and get the mastering. Get a person who you trust to kind of listen and get some input on those.
I think this is the thing that I think I sort of when I'm working on stuff, a bit of a problem that I have is that I'm not always thinking about the mix, um, and I'm always sort of trying to think about energy and movement, and sometimes things that I think sound energetic and have movement are the things that are maybe screwing up the mix. you know, so punchy kicks and snares, and then I mean, and particularly, particularly with these two tracks here, where I was talking about that filter, I kind of wanted them to sort of throb, you know.
Yeah,
And so I'm thinking about how are they actually creating movement rather than where are they sitting, and I think for me that's maybe not that's something I kind of have to work on when it comes to actually mixing stuff, is to kind of let that go and sort of stop thinking about movement and energy and feeling and actually think like, does it sound right? Is it sitting right?
I think mixing is like the whole different discipline you have to consider. But if you're not confident, I feel it's fine. If it sounds good to you, just don't think about it, just push it out. And in
Yeah.
mastering, one of the jobs is, of course, preserving the artistic vision behind this. So I'm not sure if I captured this whole wah effect you were talking about, but hopefully it's still there and people can hear it. And also, it's really important to understand that the sound you're hearing is very specific and very unique to your speakers, your room, and your ears. So it's gonna sound vastly different on all of the speaker systems you can test it on. Um, so I think one of the benefits of like proper mastering setup is because it's tuned to deliver kind of flatter and realistic sound picture that you can work with. So I feel that's important. So monitoring setup is, and especially room is one of the most important things. So yeah, awesome. Should we move on to the next one, to the
Yeah.
last? All right, let's listen to the original. I'm I feel this is the most Ned Rush track on this release.
It's it's the crazy. I didn't hold back.
Yeah.
By this point, I was like, oh, I've got maybe 3 or 4 good ones. I don't care about this one. Let's just.
Yeah, no, it's a good track. But I'm now thinking, am I going a bit soft on the bass? I feel like maybe we should have added a little bit more bass. But looking at the spectrogram, I don't think so. I think my headphones are deceiving me because I felt it sounded really good on a speaker set. Yeah, so this actually refers to what I've been talking about, the setup you're making music with. So every time you put a new pair of headphones or you're listening in different environments, you're gonna get a completely different picture. So yeah, that's an awesome album. Well, not an album. You already corrected me. It's an EP, extended play. So
It's 30 minutes, about 27 minutes.
yes, you're right. And
That's enough
everyone
time for
should
a
go.
walk.
Sorry?
That's enough time for a walk, a brisk walk.
Stop speaking over me, Ned Rush.
I'm sorry.
All
Sorry,
right.
carry on.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it's an unexpected release from you, and everyone should go ahead and get a taste of it. Um, I think it's a good piece of music, great material. However you created it, and was it an experiment for you in a way? Since that's what's kind of a push three thing you decided to do.
Um, eh, yeah, I sort of just wanted to try and just make some stuff very quickly and quite basic, sort of go back to basics for me, and sort of just focus on just getting a good vibe going very quickly, and yeah, just sort of make something that was a little bit more like dance floor. I've been to a couple of things and couple of shows or whatever, gigs and things, and I was sort of listening to the stuff and thinking, oh, actually, a lot of these things I'm listening to, they've actually got a very limited palette. It's actually just good kick, good snare, and then some stuff washing around over the top or something. And I was like, oh, I just want to try and make some stuff that's a little bit more back to basics. And I didn't really have any ideas musically, so I just stole someone else's.
Well,
basically.
if you want to do music like Ned Rush, just go ahead and watch Ned Rush videos how to steal.
Well, this is the thing. I can't really do a video about sampling other people's music on YouTube because that's going to get me potentially into some issues. So
Oh,
I'll just
really?
release the music instead. Well, I suspect probably that I'd get into demonetization problems, copyright strikes, and all that sort of stuff.
Hmm. Does
So I
all
just
right.
release the music instead.
I know nothing about YouTube, and you can probably see this based on how well this is going. But yeah, everyone, please go ahead and subscribe to Ned Rush channel. Go listen to Ned Rush's music.
And indeed, this channel.
Yes, look, we want to do more than 50 subscribers, so please do subscribe to this channel as well. I'll try my best to produce some video content, which I'm terrible at. That's why you are here, Ned Rush, because you're good at it. And hopefully it was entertaining in some sorts. Hopefully something useful you could pick up. Feel free to ask any questions, leave your comments. If it's terrible, don't hesitate to let us know. If it's good, keep it to yourself. So, thank you so much for joining, Mr. Ned Rush.
Thank
I
you. And
will
also,
add
don't forget
links.
to say that the tools that were used for both the production and the mastering of these tracks are available to buy.
Absolutely. Yes, sorry, I
Go and
forgot
buy
the
them.
reason why I actually recording this. Absolutely. Please buy our devices. They're awesome. There
Put some
are
links in the
I
description.
will absolutely leave links in the description. We've put a lot of love into them, a lot of care. They're really fun to use. So, thank you so much for listening and bye.
Bye.